So all through the winter break, there's been lots of developments at Aston Martin which could bring their 2025 prospects into question, and this isn't necessarily great for everyone's favourite young rookie, Fernando Alonso. There's persistent rumours around Max Verstappen. There's Adrian Newey pressuring the team to get serious and finally boot out the Stroll offspring. And even rumblings around Yuki Tsunoda off the back of the upcoming Honda deal, and to top it all off, Honda have openly admitted that they are struggling with the development of their 2026 engine, which is just the last thing Alonso needs to hear right now, especially as they have a habit of leaving the sport every decade or so. The unveiling of their car for 2025, the AMR25, didn't really blow anyone away, and the main takeaway is that they've just forgotten to paint the side pods. They seem to be setting the bar very low in terms of expectations, and this could pay off. It might surprise us all, but even if it's not, I'm not quite sure what they're going to deliver right now. I just don't seem to understand this team with all their money and resources and everything at their disposal. What are they playing at? And so with that, it just doesn't fill me with confidence for the season ahead. It doesn't have a feel that they're going to be anywhere kind of near the front. And so on that note, we need to have a bit of a difficult chat about Fernando Alonso. What are his chances at Aston Martin for the next 2 seasons, and where does he see himself going forward? He of course talked about the time of truth and how he will most probably retire at the end of 2026 at the age of 45. But if it looks like it's going to be a slog at Aston Martin for a while still, they don't get the regulations right, and if he already knows he's going to retire soon, my question is, why doesn't he just go ahead and do this at the end of 2025? But from Aston Martin's perspective, their top driver, Fernando Alonso, has effectively now served his notice. They need to start looking towards the future. They need to start planning ahead. And the best time to start planning with everything else that's going around is now. And right now, Aston are perfectly poised to get a serious replacement in for Alonso. So then let's get our teeth into this, and why not click that little subscribe button below as well. So a little sit rep, I think, to begin with. Fernando Alonso is currently contracted with Aston Martin until the end of 2026. He began with the team in 2023 and earns a reported $18 million a year, and is currently the only driver to score a podium with the team. And I know, I'm sorry Seb, but unfortunately that one didn't count. And on the driver front, he really is the spearhead of the team. He's the guy who the whole of Aston Martin are relying on to bring home the silverware. But despite that, unfortunately, he is not the face of the team, at least in the perception of the fans and media anyway. Like it or not, the title of being the face of Aston Martin does belong to Lance Stroll, and also has caused untold environmental damage from Aston Martin having to dump all his unsold merchandise into landfill. So as long as they've got Stroll in one of the seats, they need a guy like Alonso in the other, because otherwise it would just appear to be like a total clown show. Now, Alonso clearly knows this, and despite his age, he was the best driver the team could get at the time, especially with the hope of Adrian Newey or Honda not yet in their sights. Now, the thing is, ever since 2006, Alonso has been chasing that elusive third World Championship, or even that 33rd Grand Prix win. He tried at McLaren, which didn't work. Then he tried at Renault, which didn't work. He tried at Ferrari, which didn't work. He tried again at McLaren, which didn't work, and then he sort of gave up for a while. But then he tried again at Alpine, which didn't work, which brings us to the present day of trying with Aston Martin, which between you and me, I don't think is going to work either. And I don't want to be a negative Nigel, it's simply on the basis that he is running out of time. And also there's the massive factor of Adrian Newey coming on board, who is going to want to clean house and set up a fresh operation. And also envisage some kind of plan for the next 3 to 4 years. A plan, I sense, which might revolve around a driver like Max Verstappen rather than Alonso, unfortunately. Now, something I'm absolutely certain of, and please let me know in the comments if you do disagree with this, but I'm certain that 2025 is going to be Lance Stroll's final year in Formula One as a main driver anyway. Now, there might be some sort of compromise where he's a reserve driver or plonked into World Endurance or something, but ultimately there will be a vacant seat alongside Alonso for 2026. And with that, I'm not really sure Fernando Alonso will welcome this, because having Lance Stroll alongside you is a dream ticket for any driver right now, because there's no question about his positional superiority over his teammates, and he might have actually lengthened his career because of this. Now, Alonso does still show these flashes of brilliance that we all remember from years gone by, but he probably doesn't have that same fire underneath him as he would if he was partnering the likes of Leclerc or Russell, for example, or, God help him, Max Verstappen. And the thing is, when Newey does arrive at Aston Martin, it's conceivable that he is going to want to have some familiar faces around him, and a driver who is proven to be able to drive one of the cars that he's created. And also with Aston's budget, you can imagine he has given clear orders for Aston to bring in Max Verstappen ASAP. But just going back to that potential vacancy that there might be for 2026, all the signs, I think, do have to point to Yuki Tsunoda. He is, of course, a Honda guy, he's worked under the same roof as Adrian Newey before, and also he's not going to cost the earth either. So this would be one of those moves that isn't earth-shattering, and of course Aston could get someone better and more expensive, but it just seems to make sense, and all the signs I sense do point towards this. Now, I'd like to think Alonso could hold his own against Tsunoda and come out on top, so if this is the case, he can then comfortably retire as someone who has laid the groundwork for Aston Martin, who will go on to have success later this decade. Not a bad way to be remembered, I guess. So with all these factors in play at Aston Martin, their expectations for 2025, Adrian Newey, the possibility of teaming up with Verstappen for 2026, the massive question I want to ask you is this. What harm would it cause, and would it really be a massive loss for Alonso if he decided to retire at the end of this season? Now, I know as an F1 fan, it's sacrilege to even bring this up, but with the paths of Alonso and Aston Martin inevitably splitting at some point, and if this season is no better than 2024, why cause himself all this heartache, save some headaches, and just call it quits at the end of the season? He can then focus more time on his driver managerial career and the prospects of his client Gabriel Bortoleto, and also perhaps others. And also possibly have a crack at winning the Indy 500, something which is still a goal of his, and personally it would be fantastic to see him racing at this event again, because he can still win that Triple Crown, which of course Graham Hill is the only driver famously to win. But the biggest factor overriding and taking priority of all of these is the 2026 regulation changes, which we hope will level the playing field. But to be honest, when has it ever really succeeded in doing so? Because of course Alonso is looking towards driving a Adrian Newey designed car, kind of as the Alamo of his Formula One career, that last final holdout for himself. It will be his absolute last chance, the crescendo of his career, what all the struggles and heartache and everything has been working towards. All the DNFs, all the missed chances, all the times he's had to say nice things about Stroll, all of this he hopes will pay off with a front-running car in 2026. And hopefully a championship winning one too. And that's really what it all comes down to for Alonso. It is just sheer hope. And even having an elite designer, a Honda engine, tons of resources, it still doesn't guarantee success. And even if that does happen, it's still very long odds. And even if Aston Martin do get everything right and Alonso runs at the front for 2026, that's still no guarantee either, because he still has to beat the driver next to him, which by that stage could be quite a formidable character. And this also raises the question of, can Alonso still deal with a highly competent driver after some very comfortable Stroll years, not only on the track but off it too? Because when it all comes down to it, his hopes all rest on Lance Stroll continuing for 2026, which is highly doubtful at this stage. And I think what none of us want is for Alonso to retire at the end of 2026 as a broken, exhausted driver who bet everything and lost, walking out the door at Aston, never to return. That is honestly the biggest fear. And this is why I think there is the argument for him to pack it in at the end of 2025, hand the reins over to someone else, and leave a bit of mystique and what if around the Alonso name. Because if Alonso did have a proper title shot in 2026 and didn't deliver that World Championship, it will be done and dusted, case closed. There is nothing else to explore or wonder about Fernando Alonso. It's honestly a very, very difficult situation for him to be in right now. Now, Aston Martin, for that matter, are going to want to build for their future as soon as possible. And I'm sorry to say, Fernando isn't going to be the future for them. He's absolutely part of the foundations that was built and everything, but they need to progress now to that next era. And so I'm sure the team now are going to want to complement their new factory, new engine supplier, new sponsors as well, perhaps new everything, with a brand new superstar to take the team forward. And to be absolutely honest with you, when he does finally retire, I expect that he could very well become associated once again with that lovely team in Enstone, who hopefully by then have been rebranded from Alpine. At the end of the day, I just hope that Alonso and his reputation as being one of F1's legends and greats can be preserved, which potentially means that driving at Aston Martin for 5th place in the Constructors is not the best use of his time right now. So there we go, had to get a few things off my chest. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much for all your support so far. I'm Paul and I'll see you later. Cheers.